Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Dogs Down South. Thank you for joining tonight. Yeah, just a little technical difficulties, so we just decided to breathe, start over, and technology is now working appropriately. So thank you for bearing with me. Hey, um, super excited to be back this week. Really cool week as we try and finish up our SEC summer preview. So we're going to be going through our last four teams on our list for SEC summer preview, as well as we're getting ready for media days, SEC media days next week. Right around the corner from me here in Tampa, Florida. The joke is I'm still waiting on my credentials for media days. I did put in requests. Uh, Chances of getting any credentials low. But as my mom always used to tell me, it's always no unless you try, right? So we're trying. But it would be really cool, but I'm not holding my breath. But looking forward to it and very excited because when media days is around the corner, that means that we are getting very, very close to the kickoff of college football. And so Georgia will be taking the podium next week on Tuesday, July 21st. If you have not already seen it, the representatives will be Gunnar Stockton, Drew Bobo, and Raylan Wilson. I think that's a really good choice to represent us as far as leadership at SEC Media Days. Looking forward to it. The schedule, if you haven't seen it, Monday will be Kentucky, Missouri, Oklahoma, and it will round out with Tennessee. Tuesday, July 21st, I just said it though, is Auburn and Georgia, South Carolina and Vanderbilt. And then Wednesday, July 22nd will be Alabama, Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. And then Thursday, July 23rd will be Arkansas, LSU, Mississippi State, and Texas. So if you're interested, I know a lot of people will be covering SEC Media Days. We will try to give as many recaps definitely from Tuesday as we can. But I can tell you it's going to be a very interesting week. I know there'll be a lot of talks about this new SEC 9-game schedule, a lot of talks, I'm sure, and questions about NIL and the future of the college football playoff and how does that affect championship games, conference championship games, and who knows, we might have some out of body experiences from some of our old coaches that might be at new teams. Hint, hint to LSU and Lane Kiffin, and then maybe some new coaches, right, at new teams, which is Florida, Alex Golish at Auburn, um, Arkansas, Silver Fox, Silverfield. Nobody's ever going to call his name right this year. Just so you know, I jokingly get it wrong every time, but that's going to be an exciting week. Once that one's in the books, we are in real countdown mode to camp starting, and that will get us into the first games of the season. And we're just looking towards fall leaves and pumpkin scents, and they're all around the corner. So if when Starbucks comes out with pumpkin spice latte, I know it's time. So, and we are very close to that. So tonight we're going to cover two teams that are right in the heart of Georgia's schedule. That is Oklahoma and Florida. And then we will finish up next week. I'm sorry, we'll finish up at the end of the week with Texas, and we'll do the Texas schools back to back. We'll do Texas and Texas A&M, and that will finish us up. But I thought it would be cool tonight to cover Florida and, of course, cover. Did I just say Texas, Texas A&M? I apologize. So we're going to cover Florida, Oklahoma. We're going to do Texas, Texas A&M. Tonight we're going to be doing Florida, Oklahoma. And then I thought it would be really cool if I shared my 2026 SEC quarterback rankings. Everybody's putting a list out there. I figured why not put a list out there from me. I've experienced some lists. I disagree with some. I agree with others, but that's why it's my list. And you can definitely give your list and you can agree and disagree, but I thought it would be fun. Before I go any farther, if you haven't already done so, please go and like and follow us on YouTube, Dogs Down South, Facebook, Dogs Down South. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Dogs Down South. Usually that's 24 hours later. I see our YouTube subscriptions growing. Thank you for listening on the YouTube platform and continue to share out all of these lives. And, obviously 24 hours later, if you're riding into work, you're riding home from work. I know that's where I have a couple of podcasts I follow, and that's where I catch most of my podcast listening is on the way into work and on the way back. And if that's how you choose to, great. But if you're watching this on YouTube, which I see is growing a lot, thank you so much for the support. Please continue to share and do not forget about our TikTok page, Dogs Down South. Go and like and follow us over there. As you know, during the season, we go live over there a lot during the week. We talk week to week, top 25. We talk games, picks, things, and we're going to rev up the content this season. This is going to be a really good season, hopefully not just for the dogs, but for revved up content coming from Dogs Down South. So we thank you for the support ahead of time. So let's hop right in. Like I said, we're going to cover Florida, we're going to cover Oklahoma, and then I'm going to do my SEC quarterback rankings. Oklahoma first. I'll tell you, this is a team and a game this year that I really feel like I have this game circled on Georgia's schedule. I don't know if you could call it a lookout game or a, you know, I forget what they call them, the words for it, but basically don't get stumped by this week or get caught looking. But I don't think by any means are we overlooking the fact that right after we open up SEC play on the road in Arkansas, we come home and we play Oklahoma. And I feel like this is a team that is trending in the right direction. Obviously, big, bold moves, hiring Jim Nagy to take over somewhat of a GM role over there. And you're going to see more, I think more schools go to a GM role where they're kind of over NIL and making sure that, they're, collaborating with the coaches to see what the needs are to make sure that we are honoring and working through the active packages that players have. And then as well as uh, recruiting as well as portal. There's so much to do in that area, and I would love to sit down with Kirby and see just how he has done what he has done the past few years and continue to coach at a high level. And maybe he's just not coming out and saying that's what he's doing. And he may be super hands off with this. There may be somebody that's doing it, but they're just not making it public right now. But I can tell you that for the most part, I think Georgia has done a really good job with NIL. And some people will be very critical of Georgia and not going after some of these big NIL contracts and chasing down these five stars and getting in bidding wars with other people. And I think that's just Georgia understanding what their needs are. If it's the right fit, if it's the right culture fit, what type of what type of player you got coming on campus that maybe could is wanting and expecting early playing time. I think I'll give you an example. I think Jared Curtis is an absolute case for study in this year and watching what happens. He'll be a quarterback that I think everybody feels like he will be the number one. He will be the starter. I mean, they shelled out money and they chased down and they outbid a lot of people to get Jared Curtis in there, along with a lot of promises and a lot of things that went on to get Jared Curtis down. Excuse me, up in Nashville, and some that we may not even hear or never know about. But he's in Nashville. He's at Vanderbilt, and he will be a freshman who is thrown into the fire this year with a team that, in my opinion, is going to digress in a lot of areas, losing a lot of players, obviously, to graduation and moving on to the pros and portal and things of that nature. This will be a Vanderbilt team that will be very. I still think Clark Lee does a great job. They're going to come in and do what Vanderbilt does the past few seasons, be very disciplined and do the most with what they have. And Jared Curtis is going to be exciting, but I feel like it's going to be a very interesting year for him as a starter, as a freshman. I don't know what he may gain if he gains more from, let's say, sitting at a Georgia, or playing first year to Vanderbilt. This will be a real test this year to see what happens with him and maybe to follow what's going on with him and see how that all pans out. And but I will tell you that this is a this is a team in Oklahoma that feels like they have it figured out with Jim Nagy as a GM. They've done a lot of things right over year. You kind of have that feeling with everything and all the puzzle pieces they have moved since Nagy has hopped in there with Brett Venables, and you have a feeling that they feel like they have done some things this year to stack on top of what they started last year, where they did make a playoff run last year, but fell short in some areas that I'm sure that everybody would agree with is the ability to run the football, some offensive line issues, and John Mateer trying to in the middle of all that, just not having, I guess, the best year that he would want coming onto Oklahoma's campus. But a lot of talk out of Oklahoma that once again tweaks in his throwing motion. I don't know if you guys have seen any recordings or anything like that of John Mateer and what's been going on with him, but I do think that he will have a better year. I think with him having the chance to be fully healthy, uh, as well as coming in and them doing a lot of work on the offensive line, a lot of work in the tight end room, bringing Jason Witten on and we'll find out very quickly if that was a play towards getting his son to come and play for Oklahoma, or do we feel like he can make a move in that tight end room that can be something that for the future is very game changing for them. But before we go through, returning players, individual stats, their schedule, and things of that nature, this is a circle game for Georgia. This is the first SEC. This is their SEC home opener, and this is early, right in September. So this will be a game to circle, watch, and look for. This will be a team. I think both of these teams will come in with pretty good records. I mean, you would predict it. I know Georgia, and after looking at Oklahoma, you would predict Oklahoma as well, depending on if they can go to Michigan and get that win. That maybe these two teams would come in with undefeated records. This could be a circled game where you might see a game day at. But these are two teams that you possibly could see playing for the SEC championship this year, in my opinion. Um, a lot of returning players on defense. But the big questions, so let's get to the big questions on Oklahoma. Number one, will the renewed emphasis on the rushing attack pay off? I feel like Oklahoma's offense, they underwent a little bit of an overhaul the offensive line. As I mentioned earlier, the tight end room. I think they probably had a little bit of a come to Jesus meeting at the table about what do we have to do better this year to set up the offense for success. And if that meshes well with the defensive game plan, will that be enough to get us to a national championship, an SEC championship, you name it, as far as goals? I think those are two things that are really, really high on the list for Oklahoma. This is a team that I think should have national championship and SEC championship goals and aspirations this year. The second thing I would say is there enough depth in some of these positions? Even though they have real big game changers, they've spent a lot of money on some of these big time game changers, but did they do enough to create depth? Did they save enough per se money for depth and roster overhaul to make sure that if they're one injury away, whether it be at linebacker, or we all know that even though you're working really hard to revamp that offensive line, is it a possibility that you've worked so hard to get it right and they're one injury away from having massive gaps in what they're trying to do? For their sake, let's hope not with what they put together. And can the tight ends become productive? I think tight ends in the SEC are sometimes overlooked. You look at offenses like Ole Miss this year with LSU, last year obviously with Florida, and some of these offenses, Lane Kiffin, that brings in, and you'll see it a little bit with Alabama. I think the tight end room can sometimes go a little bit overlooked. I would even say for what Georgia recruits at the tight end level, sometimes I think that we don't get them as much involved as we've done in our championship runs. I think you couldn't overlook Brock Bowers, obviously, but Darnell Washington and some of those guys that just can't overlook to not have them in the gameplay. And I think not to go too far into Georgia because we are going to really do the same thing with Georgia, but talk through. I think some of these situations where people are like, can Georgia in the wide receiver room? That's a circle bubble for everybody. The wide receiver room. I think a lot of things that could take some problems off the plate for these wide receivers this year to have to grow up really, really quickly will be the tight end room. I really do think that, and we're going to talk more about it when we preview Georgia at the very tail end of all of this. But let's look real quick. Obviously, names um, that you need to know. Obviously, John Mateer returning. A lot of high hopes for him coming out of Washington, transferring over into their offense last year, bringing over Ben Arbuckle from Washington, who was a a big mastermind. I'm sorry, Washington State, a big mastermind on the offensive side of the ball. And when you look back at last year, you had so many high hopes for the offense, and to go as far as they did with it just goes to show how good of a play caller and a defensive coordinator Brent Venables is. But no matter how good that defense was last year, you just felt like the Achilles heel was the offense, the inability to run the football. You're going to hear that a lot in this SEC preview, and you've heard it a lot already. Is offensive line play? Offensive line play is going to come up over and over again. But obviously, John Mateer can be a positive if he's healthy. If in fact this throwing motion has changed for the good, if in fact they're adding, a running game this year. Uh, I, man, I cannot tell you. Another one of the things I was saying the SEC is balance. I said it last week. Balance is just extremely crucial this year. Have they done? I think Xavier Robinson coming over. Have they done enough for this guy to be able to make Oklahoma balance this year? Obviously, Isaiah Satania. I love that name, Isaiah Satania. Electric, 5'10", 185-pound, kid that has the opportunity this year to just be explosive and a dynamic game changer. And another name coming over from the University of Texas, Parker Livingston, who I think, in my opinion, was one of the best receivers besides Ryan Wingo last year at Texas. Nobody will ever know the story behind all that, but I do think that Parker Livingston was a huge get for Oklahoma. And obviously, when you look at the tight end room, we just talked about this, but Hayden Hanson, this tight end room has had some work done to it. Can it live up to its name? Rekindling the offensive line, Michael Fuzani, Jake Makula. You look at this offense, and this is where the big change has to come this year. Defense is going to be, I think, an elite defense in the SEC. I'll tell you, it's a top 2, top 3 defense in the SEC. I think it's a top 10 defense in all of college football. I say 10 because I'm going off of statistics and what it should be. I really want to say top 5 in college football, but I'll leave it at top 10 for right now. Big names to know: Davis Stone, obviously the big defensive tackle, 6'3", 315 junior. And he's just supposed to make a big impact this year, right? Had a great year last year. Jaden Jackson, Taylor Ween, Kip Lewis. Kip Lewis pulled a Trinidad Chambliss. He got his 10th year of eligibility, so he's going to come on and play this year. Eli Brown, Courtney Gullery, and then Peyton Bowen, the free safety, and the great kicker Tate Sandel with the. If everybody remembers Tate, he was remembered so fondly for wearing those are borderline just biker shorts, right? They're not even, are kickers even wearing any like football pants anymore? That's what he's known for. It was kind of a joke. But I have high hopes for Oklahoma. Right now, I'm kind of outside picking them to make a splash and possibly end up in the SEC championship. Now, of course, as we get going this year and as things start stacking up, we'll get a better look. But preseason, I think Oklahoma is a top 3 team in the SEC. Personally, that's me. Let's look at schedule real quick. So obviously the schedule will come into play. Now, I think Oklahoma's schedule is decently doable. Okay. They open up UTEP. I think UTEP should be a win. There's a question mark behind, Michigan. Obviously, you got to go to the big house. Bryce Underwood and this team, and obviously going through coaching changes and a lot going on in the drama category from last year, the last 2-3 years, if you really want to be honest. But Jesse Minter coming over from the Chargers to take on this program. You would hope that this program is going to. I'm so sorry, it's not Jesse Minter. Minter did not go to Michigan. It's Whittingham from Utah coming in with a new dynamic, a new flair. You've seen what he can do at Utah with a lot less money, a lot less facilities, and a lot less. Not that Utah is some bottom of the barrel, but a lot less support at Utah. Michigan is obviously a prime program. History at Michigan is very rich, and if he can even come close to mimicking the success he had at Utah with some of the challenges that he was faced I think he will not have these challenges at Michigan. And but you got to figure out what the marriage looks like, right? So this is not a Big Ten podcast, so I'm not going to go too farther at that. But I would say that I think Oklahoma can go in there and get that win. So I really have Georgia. I have Georgia and Oklahoma undefeated when they meet for that game in September 28th. The 19th, they go. They're home against New Mexico. I feel like that's a win, and obviously they go to Georgia on the 28th. I still think Georgia's too much at home early in the year. Hopefully healthy, both teams. But I do think Georgia early in the year is catching Oklahoma, and the best thing to do to catch Oklahoma is going to be early in the year for Georgia. So I think Georgia still gets that win. That puts them 3-1, and then obviously the Red River, man, tough, tough. This is where I talk about tough schedule. You got big showdown with Georgia. One of the first times you played Georgia. I don't know history wise, but definitely in a while. Um, I take that back, except for the Rose Bowl game, obviously. But you got Red River at Texas. I think Oklahoma wins that. I think Oklahoma finds a way to beat Texas in the Red River this year. Kentucky at home, I think, is a win. At Mississippi State's a win. South Carolina, I think, is a win. At Florida's a win. Ole Miss for me is a home game. I do think there could be a loss this late in the season. The tough part is you got to go at Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and I just think one of those is a loss. Don't quote me on which one it is, but if I had to really pick it, I think it could be careful of the at Florida. It's more like a trap game before Ole Miss. But if the trap game doesn't come down, I do think they have enough to beat Ole Miss. It would be Texas A&M that I would worry with that you look and you go through. I mean, they just went through. I think South Carolina will still be really decently good this year. I mean, Shane Beamer, which we've already previewed South Carolina, but man, he's done a really great job on the recruiting trail this year. Does that mean that buys him a few more, games this year? Maybe instead of winning six, you can excuse me, instead of winning 8, maybe you can get by with 6, 7, no pun intended. I don't think so, but I do know that you can't base your entire team off just recruiting. But if you do get rid of Beamer, he has some really. I mean, he has 4 or so of those 4 or 5 stars playing on the same team this year that he's recruited, which are some of the best talent that South Carolina's gotten in the history of South Carolina. So that's a little bit up to debate for, but I do think if I had to pick the game they lose, I would say the trap game is either at Florida or Texas A&M, and M, and I think they take care of business at Missouri. So I think this is a 2-loss Oklahoma team this year, right? A lot of people are saying that they just don't see the SEC going. The 9-game schedule is kind of a gauntlet. They don't see the SEC coming out undefeated. They'd also just really don't see them. They don't see any SEC team. It would not be surprising for a 2-loss SEC team to be totally fine and to get in the playoff. And I do think this is a 2-loss Oklahoma team, but this is a team that I've picked to make the college football playoff. Very high on Oklahoma. I think they could cause some big time problems for the SEC this year, especially with the schedule they have, which, in my opinion, is a little bit more favorable than I think it's a little bit more favorable than some other teams I think could buy. For time's sake, I am going to since we talked about Red River, I'm gonna do a little curveball here because I am not a pro by any means, but I'm not certain. I think we have done Florida. I had Florida on my list, but for unprofessionalism, but 100% knowing that we haven't done this team, we will slip over into Texas since we're doing Red River. We'll go ahead and knock Texas out of the ballpark. Fish, don't get mad at me. Fish is going to do the remaining teams with me, but I think it would be poetic since we are doing Oklahoma is to continue with the Red River and to preview Texas. Now, man, I got some. This is gonna. They're gonna be some not happy campers when it comes down to what I'm gonna say about Texas tonight. Now we're gonna preview them, but I'm very concerned about Texas this year. Now I got a lot of people out there that are very high on Texas. I got a lot of people you're gonna see in the quarterback rankings. You may not like my quarterback rankings. That's fine. Believe it or not, they're not really heavy. Georgia. They're not steered heavy towards Georgia. A lot of people would be like, well, of course you're Georgia. You do it. It's a Georgia podcast for the most things. So of course you're probably going to have Gunnar Stockton at one. I don't. But because I'm going to try to be very truthful, please don't get offended if, you don't like what I'm about to say. If you're a Texas fan, everybody's going to have their opinion. But really, at the end of the day, it just comes down to what I feel like might happen. I will start out with this. I'm a little bit concerned for Texas this year. Okay. Now, have they gone out and done everything they possibly can to go out and try to win an SEC championship and to vie for a national championship this year in terms of recruitment, in terms of NIL, transfer portal, money, coaching? Yes, they have. Maybe to some degree overcompensating. Now, I'll give you some hot takes. Number one hot take, I don't know if the answer was replacing the defensive coordinator. Now, I love Will Muschamp. I've repetitively said this the past few months when we've talked Texas a little bit. There are probably some hot takes out there with me on them talking about how I don't know how if I love Will Muschamp, and obviously I don't just love him because he was at Georgia and because he's good friends with Kirby Smart, but I Coach Boom has always been the demeanor of how he coaches is the way I see coaching coming out, right? I like the aggressive, in your face care, a lot of in your face, but a lot of care. And I think that's what he does. That's why he's been so successful everywhere he's gone. And some people could say, well, has he really? I mean, as far as coaching and as far as the culture and coaching team and coaching players up, and yeah, I think he's had good teams. Has he finished the drill every time? Maybe not. But we've all seen, no matter how great you are sometimes as a head coach, your coordinator hires can make or break you. And they're very naggy, and they can be very honestly, they can just take the wheels right up out from under you. We've seen it. We've seen it. We've seen it. We've seen it. And so I don't know if the top, move that they made was Will Muschamp's defensive coordinator. But let's just say that's a big time move for them. Things going in the right direction for all this talent on defense to, I don't know, finally get their life together. What are the reasons behind it? I don't know. Will Muschamp hasn't called a defensive scheme by himself in 9 years. But maybe they're looking at trying to bring some of that DNA back to Austin. He's been there before, done that. He knows the expectations in Austin. They have never changed, regardless of when NIL and BCS and playoff and all that changed and moved. Austin has still had the same goals, which is they expect to vie for a national championship every year. They feel like they have the money, they feel like they have the support and all the necessary facility and means to do it, and so they expect nothing less. That is where I find it very tricky this year. I repeat, Texas will always feel like they have the facilities, the money, the support, and everything they need to be successful and to win national championships and SEC championships for that reason. And they're not going to take no for an answer. And that's what's going to be very haunting possibly this year because, in my opinion, when you look at Sarkeesian and what he was supposed to bring to this team, I don't think he's brought a dynamic of Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or Kirk Signetti type head coaching punch. I think part of the reason why he was going to be a great hire was because of his offensive mind, right? Texas, in my opinion, has always been a school that has always been stabilized with their defense and having good defenses. And so they figure if they can come in, bring in this offensive mastermind, and that turn, a lot of recruits will be like, not only do I want to go play for Texas, but I want to play for Sarkeesian. That gives me an upper hand to go to the league. And all Sarkeesian has done has digressed this offense since he's been here. Check it out for yourself. I'm not just throwing statistics out there that are mad statistics. This offense with blue chip 5-star recruits. I mean, everybody said Quinn Ewers was one of the best college football players at the quarterback position to come through this league in a long, long time. Maybe since Peyton Manning, right? But I just didn't see anything jumping off the page to me about Quinn Ewers in his growth throughout his collegiate career. And I think we've all seen his pro career. It hasn't been that stellar. And I think Sarkeesian has a lot to do with that, which will put me into the dynamic of, as we start to preview them, to go, I'm concerned about Texas, and I'm worried about if expectations are too high for them this year, and maybe once again too high for Arch Manning and what they're going to again throw out as far as expectations for him. So, as I started out Oklahoma, let's start out with Texas. Let's talk about the three biggest questions. Can the running game regain its explosiveness? Can the line play be good enough this year and the running game be explosive? Now, I think this line will be better this year. I think running backs, I think you look at Hollywood Smothers, they went and stole him from Alabama. Um, but you're looking at explosive runs. If you remember correctly, let's talk about Georgia and explosive pass plays. This is a team that has not been able to rake off an explosive run play and get people going. When you look at Texas firing Chad Scott, replacing him with a 30-year vet. I forget how to pronounce his name. I think it's Julecki. Um, Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, proven history there, but can they extend it enough to be able to get some of the pressure off of Arch to be able to respect the run in Austin? Second thing, will the passing game execute more consistently? We all know that Arch Manning has great wheels. We all know that Arch Manning has a great play caller. We all know Arch Manning has, with that combination, should be great, should be deadly, should be a really incredible quarterback, should possibly be the first quarterback coming off the board in next year's draft. Newsflash, he won't. He won't be. I think Arch is going to have a lot of pressure on this year. Does he have the players around him to be able to release some of that pressure? Yeah, but I still don't know. And I will tell you this, and I will say it till I don't know for terms of previewing the Longhorns till the cows come home. That Arch Manning in that Ohio State game last year had me scratching my head. Like that was a game where I look and go, if anything was going to say hype for Arch Manning and go, what is the hype going to be for him this year? Is he going to set the tone, or is he going to fall victim to the hype of what people are saying he is or is not going to be? And for me, he never got off the bus for that game, right? He he had games against a lot of teams last year that if he just gets off the bus and performs like Arch Manning is paid to perform, Texas is a better team. And the last thing I will say is, can Will Muschamp take the defense to the next level? I just talked about it, but it has to happen. If you're going to go out and you're going to fire, this guy, I don't even know his name, if you're going to fire him and get rid of him and basically be the scapegoat for Steve Sarkeesian, then I don't think Sarkeesian can miss on Will Muschamp, and I don't think Sarkeesian can miss this year with this roster and the amount of money they spent on it and what they've added to that roster. Now, that roster is what are some of these newcomers? Obviously, we talked about Arch Manning, big time last year, 3,163 yards, completed 248 passes, averaged 26 TDs and 7 interception. You got Ryan Wingo returning back, adding to Cam Coleman. Obviously, talked about Raleek Brown with Hollywood Smothers, Mosley at wide receiver as well. This line is revamped. Connor Robertson, Brandon Baker, and then the defense. I mean, this is the reason why I think they thought they had to have a move, was because if we come in this year and we don't win on the defensive side of the ball, what, like, maybe he looks and goes like, what do we have to kind of offer there? Do I have any excuses per se? And I don't think you do. So when you look at Hero Canoe, Alex January, you look at Ty Anthony Smith, Grayson Littlejohn. I mean, man, the list goes on. Jelani McDonald, Cade Phillips, Bo Mason. I mean, when you look at this team and you look at and it doesn't even. I mean, Colin Simmons is the middle piece of that. Sorry, I'm losing my material right here. Is the middle piece of that. This is a team that is just loaded on the defensive side of the ball. So you can see why it's just crucial. And I think they've been loaded for the past 2 or 3 years, but it's crucial that Will Muschamp come in and be the saving grace. You know, do I think Will Muschamp was brought in to bring some of that Georgia pedigree on defense? Yeah, but in my opinion, to what's the word for it? To not get too far in deep, but understand that Georgia had its own problems on defense the last 2 or 3 years. that have kept them from being the elite defense that they have the opportunity to be. In my opinion, that's been getting to the quarterback and causing havoc. And with Texas, it's just not matched up. In big games where the run needed to be stopped, it wasn't. In big games where you had to hold quarterbacks under 300 yards of passing, it didn't happen. And they just didn't win games they should have won last year based off the defensive production matched up with Arch Manning not bringing his best to the table. Did it get better at the end of the year last year? Yeah, but I think it was too late at the end of the year. And so, this team, I'm concerned about. There's a lot of hot takes on Texas, a lot. This room on media day will be full of questions that for the average coach you would expect to get with the roster, the money you've spent, the hot seat, but maybe it's not being implicated that it's hot, but it is hot. I mean, I think it's hot. That's just me. I think it's hot. Obviously, Texas State, they open up against. That's a win. They get Ohio State at home. Um, for terms of the SEC, I'm going to root for Texas in this one. I'm going to hope that Texas can get a win in this one, win one for the Gipper of the SEC, I guess you would say. I'll give it to them. The UTSA, I think, is a win. They go to Tennessee. Um, Tennessee's going to be tougher to play this year than you think. I really like Tennessee. I think if they can come out and show us that Faison Brandon or George McIntyre can be whichever one's picked, I think it'll be Faison Brandon, but can get into this offense for Josh Heupel and perform with the running game, Wisner, the receivers, Jim Knowles with this defense. Uh, Tennessee is my sleeper in the SEC. Every year I name my sleeper, and giving some information out too early, but I'm really telling you, Tennessee has the opportunity to be really good, or if things can't click and it all come together, it could be really bad. But at Tennessee, I'll give it a win for right now. I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you something in a second, though, that makes me really scared. Um, I can't call it as a win because I called it as a loss earlier when I was previewing Oklahoma. So I'll say Red River will go to Oklahoma, Florida at home. I think they squeaked by Florida. Ole Miss, it's going to be tough, man. This is going to be tough. They get them at home. They get them at home. Um, I think I think this game I think this game could go to Texas. I think it'll be fine, but very close. Mississippi State's a win. At Missouri's a win. At LSU is a game I have circled. This is Death Valley. This is Lane Kiffin. This is Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, two offensive minds. It's gonna come down to offensive minds. And right now, I would tell you that I just said that Sarkisian has digressed this offense, and he was supposed to be the one taking it to new levels. I think LSU has an opportunity to win this game, and I think they do late in the year. Arkansas is a win, and then they go to Texas A&M, and I really think they go to Texas A&M, and this is a tough game. Last game of the year, rivalry. I think this could be a struggle bus for them on the road late in the year, depending on where they're at. Depending on if Steve Sarkisian's even still the coach at Texas. Now, you know, I'll end it like this before I go into my SEC quarterback rankings, but I think this could be a possibility that if you look at Texas State, if they drop a game against Ohio State because of just not being prepared like they were last year, and you look at UTSA, and then you go to at Tennessee and you slip up and lose to Tennessee, you could be 2-2 going into Oklahoma. Now, here's where it gets tricky. If you're 2-2 and you're going into Oklahoma and you lose the Red River rivalry, you're 2-3. And are you playing for your job against Florida at home? And you just don't know where Summerall and this Florida team will be at that time. We have implications of where we think they'll be, but could Summerall come in and just change the game? They have the talent, they have the offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner. I think they have a chance to be better this year, and they have a chance to be an 8-win, really good 9-win, possibly like Tennessee. Could they slip in because of their schedule? I don't know. I don't think that. But man, how interesting could this be? Because right behind them, you get Ole Miss. This could be very tricky for Texas. You heard it here first. Here's the hot take. Texas needs to be very careful in the first 6 to 7 games, no pun intended, of the year. Why? Because you cannot afford to lose to Ohio State, at Tennessee, Red River, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and then slip up against Florida. If you do that, I just don't know if Texas is sitting there going, we can let this go. Because if they do, they would be the laughing stock of the SEC because the amount of money they spend on this roster, the saving grace of Will Muschamp, and the recruiting that they have on the line for this, and also the fact that that would mean that the offense has either continued to digress under Sarkisian or they made the wrong call and Muschamp is dropping the ball again on defense. And I just showed you how much talent was on defense. And so both of these are not going to be a good look. Either Sarkisian's going to get hit for the offense not once again not performing or making the wrong call on defense. And God forbid both. But if that happens, here's my hot take. If that happens and they're 2-2 and they go in and they drop the Red River rivalry and they go to 2-3, I think that Texas is sitting at a crossroad going, do we make a decision right now before it goes too far? Will Muschamp has been the coach at Texas before, and I'm not saying it's their first choice, but I am saying that to be careful because I don't think that Texas will wait this year. I don't. Too much money, too much Texas oil money to be wasting out there, and it will be loud, loud, loud if they are 2-2 going into Red River. Almost unheard of loud, almost where commentators are sitting in a booth going, if Sark does not win the Red River rivalry, he's out. And I'm calling it. Now, on top of that, I think Arch Manning stands a possibility of being the biggest bust ever. This is huge for him and Sarkisian this year. Not just from the draft stock, but from the fact of he's been at Texas for 3 years as a big time piece of the puzzle there. And he has had some of the best rosters in college football, and he's done nothing with them. So what makes you think Arch Manning is going to go into one of the worst teams in the NFL and be a game changer? He can't win with the roster that he has, which is a top 5 roster every single year he's been at Texas. So what is going to make people pick him and go, he's going to be the saving grace of the Falcons. He's going to be the saving grace of the Colts. You name it. I'm not a big NFL guy, so if I just named one of your teams, I'm sorry. But that's where I'm at. I feel like that, probably going to be severely controversial, but it's just where I'm at. And that's all it is to it. All right, so that kind of lands the plane on our got 2 more teams that we're going to hit this week. But I thought with the last 10 or 15 minutes we had tonight in the podcast, we would do my SEC quarterback rankings as we're entering into the upcoming season. I'm going to try to roll back a little bit here. And so I'm going to try to support as much as I can with statistics, things of that nature. But I feel like when I start the bottom of this list, I feel like that this list at the bottom could go a lot of general direction, good or bad. Okay. So I would tell you that these bottom 6 names, 7 names, maybe 5, 6, 7, 5, maybe 5 names could go either way. So no matter if you agree or disagree, I do think there's a good opportunity that one of these or 2 of these quarterbacks could be a little bit higher depending on kind of how they roll in. And so 16. So 16, I have KJ Jackson from Arkansas. Now, merely the fact of I think that everything that Arkansas does this year is going to be hard. Okay. A lot of roster turnover. Ryan Silver Fox / Silverfield / silver medal. I think he'd be wishing for a silver medal this year. Is going to be hard on the defensive side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball. Are they going to make strides this year? I think yes. I think you're going to see some things that are going in the right direction. I think you won't see them as much as you would see in another conference because this is the SEC. And it's very hard to see some of these teams get better even when their record doesn't show it. But I think you could see an Arkansas team get better this year, but their record not show it. But KJ Jackson, depending on if he's even the guy all year, is just going to have a hard time this year. Not a lot to look forward to in the run game, not a lot of look forward to in the passing game. It's going to take a lot this year just to get some confident development for KJ Jackson. So I have him at 16. I think Arkansas is going to struggle in general this year as well. Now, at 15, I have Austin Simmons from Missouri. Now, I know this is the Austin Simmons that everybody was like, he came in against Georgia and, he made Georgia look like this and so on and so forth. And last year, injuries, he loses his job to Trinidad Chambliss. And did he lose his job or was it really more like it was never really thoroughly his? I know you could see on his face last year that he was not very happy with his role. Who would be in an era where you're just trying to make sure you have as much exposure at the college level to make sure that you can ensure your draft stock? And when you're riding the bench, we don't get a lot of draft stock value from practice. So obviously, on his face, there was a lot of frustration. He decides to come up this year in a year where, you obviously see Trinidad Chambliss vying for his ninth year of eligibility. Crazy, man. It's wild. We got to fix this so immediately. Not because I am scared of Trinidad Chambliss. It's just how many quarterbacks are just going to be like, man, I'm just going to stay, right? I can make $2 million in college, and I just can kind of continue to just, go to class as a 25-year-old and just play some football, man. And it's like, Ole Miss fans are going to be like, yeah, you hate Trinidad Chambliss. He worked you, this, that, and other. Yeah, he did. He had a great game in the Sugar Bowl, but he didn't come out on the winning end during the regular season. So I don't think you can solely look at Trinidad and Georgia and go Trinidad Chambliss owned Georgia's defense. I don't. I think he had a hell of a game, and I think he deserved uh, the outcome that happened. Anybody would say that their team deserves it, but it did fall their way. Kudos to Trinidad because he had the best game of his career. Um, but I have Austin Simmons here. I think he's going to have promise this year. But once again, I group these five kind of together. So could he be a little bit above the next two? Maybe. I have no idea, but I do feel confident about these five being at the bottom. 14, I have Jared Curtis at Vanderbilt. I just think it's going to be really hard this year with replacing a Diego Pavia, losing all the productivity they have on the offense, the offensive line, trying to get it going. I think he's going to be running for his life this year. I think experience is going to play. I mean, don't get me wrong. I heard he had a really good spring game. A lot of people watched this game and said, man, he's the real deal. I just hope for his sake that he doesn't hear a lot about like, man, maybe he should have stayed at Georgia. Maybe he should have took his opportunity there. Maybe it proves to be a little bit more psychological and put him back more for having a year where he's running for his life and really just as a quarterback, you tote a lot of the blame. And can you find yourself on social media posts understanding as a young quarterback in a game where you're supposed to be maybe even still learning it, that you're struggling and your team's struggling. And part of the reason why maybe Vanderbilt finishes in the bottom of the SEC this year is because of the inexperience of the offensive line. The talent level at the quarterback position, Jared Curtis, is very high. But I think we've all seen quarterbacks in this list that had offensive lines that were questionable last year that didn't have the years that they wanted to have. With that being said, uh, at 13, I have Aaron Philo from Florida. Um, I feel like Aaron Philo, out of the two, I'm trusting he's going to be the starter because I think Buster Faulkner and Georgia Tech and their relationship at Georgia Tech and being able to come in. It was the best situation for Florida because you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, but you're also bringing in a transfer quarterback that has played in the scheme with Buster Faulkner. And so I think that gives him a little bit of an edge over Tramel Jones at Florida. Do I think Philo? I mean, I don't know. Do I think he'll share time with Tramel Jones? I think Tramel Jones is a very exciting player, and I have him down here mainly because he might share time. Does he play the entire year? Are we just getting to a point where, he can take over, the reins can be taken over by, well, who knows? But if Philo's doing well, obviously, it's a Jake Fromm type moment at Georgia. Like, you're not going to pull that guy, even though you have Justin Fields sitting on the bench and he's a 5-star, and maybe he has the opportunity to add more excitement. But what's going to put you in the best position to win? So I have Aaron Philo right there. Um, so from bottom to top, KJ Jackson, Austin Simmons, Jerry Curtis, Aaron Philo at 12. I have Kenny Minchie from Kentucky. I'm betting this mainly on the fact that I think Kentucky's offense under Will Stein will be better this year. I think Will Stein, coming over from Oregon, has given Oregon a really, really, really good offense the past 3 or 4 years, and I think he does a really good job. And I know that I trust in Will Stein even more so than Sarkisian, because I feel like Sarkisian always had the background of a head coach, where I look at Stein and he's just been a very good offensive coordinator and has a good offensive scheme and been able to make offenses transcend into machines when he's been a part of it. And so I trust that. I know Kenny Minchie comes over from Notre Dame. He was kind of, I guess you would call it, secondhand to CJ Carr, but that doesn't mean at Notre Dame that there's not a talent coming out of there. I think he has a good situation coming to play for Will Stein, the quarterback whisperer. And I think Kenny Minchie, I think he has a good year. I think this offense for Kentucky definitely gets better this year. So with that being said, I have him at 12. Now, here's where I have mine a little bit different than some people. At 11, I have Faison Brandon at 11. Okay. Now, some people are doing their ratings off of what they think the end of the year will look like. Mine's more like, what do I think the beginning of the year will look like? And what do these rankings look like as people look and go, what can I expect from my team? A little bit different scenario, because I do feel like that we're just kind of wasting our breath if we're just ranking quarterbacks, because they are going to change. There are going to be some of these quarterbacks that either are really, really good or they really don't live up to their name. But I'm just going, hey, this is what you can expect. This is where I have them ranked, to kind of go, okay, where's the offense going to be in the first 5 to 6 games of the year, to where we can honestly hone in on what is this team going to be for this year in the SEC. Because I can tell you, there's not a lot of SEC teams that are going to be 0-3, 0-4 in the middle of the year going, yeah, so here we go. Let's continue rocking, Aaron Philo. No, it's go time to be experimental. It's go time now to go. Now we need to figure out how to get into a bowl game and to look at the future. So I think it's only fair that we look at what is this team going to be looking at, to where we can figure out, why did this team get to where they were going in the middle of the year and starting the year off? Because I can't tell you at the end of the year what this is going to look like. I can tell you this quarterback list was definitely a little bit different from me. I didn't share it last year, but it was different from me from a statistical standpoint when I did it last year. A lot of the quarterbacks that I had mid-tier, lower level, were actually really, really good, and they were up in the upper level of with this list. But that's where I have Kenny Minchie, and then I have Faison Brandon, obviously at Tennessee. I just don't know with Faison Brandon. He's like Jerry Curtis. He's coming into a situation. Do I think it's a better situation? Maybe. I don't know. I think when you look at Aaron Philo, when you look at Kenny Minchie, when you look at all these guys, like, the one thing I will tell you different is obviously Faison Brandon and Josh Heupel, another name on that list, to where he's taken quarterbacks and had really good seasons with them. I mean, a lot of people looked at Aguilar and was like, man, they scraped the bottom of the barrel for Aguilar, and he didn't do anything but go out and just throw for, you know, well close to, or maybe ever did he throw over four? I don't know. Very close to 4,000 yards last year. And if you'd have told me he was going to do that, I'd been like, nah, there's no way. So Heupel's always been able to get a lot more out of a little. So that's why I have Faison Brandon here. I still think it's could be a little low, but I think I'm safe with him here. I think next on my list, this is where it starts to get a little bit tough. A lot of people now, statistics alone and the ability to help their team. I have Kamario Taylor down here. Okay. Do I think Kamario Taylor is going to have good stats? Do I think he's going to have I mean, obviously, when you look at Mississippi State and the ability to throw the football. I think that gives an edge as far as statistically for this kid, but I don't think the game changer as far as him being at the quarterback position for them to win games is going to be that successful for him to be named as one of the top, 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the SEC. So I have Kamario Taylor here, but I think he has a lot of upside. I think he has a lot of he has a great arm. He has a great physical body. I think if he can grow this year, I think he could be a great quarterback. I just don't know if it's this year. So I have Kamario Taylor right there. Next on my list, coming in at 8, I have at 8. I got Keelan Russell, man, from Alabama. Out of all of the rookie quarterbacks, this is the one that I have the most kind of I'm the most excited about. I think Keelan Russell can be elusive. I think he has a great arm. I think he is a prototypical 5-star. And when you look at Ryan Grubb and you look at Kalen DeBoer, the one thing you can say is they do a lot with a little at the quarterback position. I think if they can do a lot with Keelan Russell, you can find this guy top 5, top 6 quarterbacks at the end of the year. And if he's in that mark, he's top 4, top 5 in the SEC. That means Alabama is vying for a playoff spot. And that's scary for other parts of the league because I do have Alabama a little bit farther down this year. But that's where I have Keelan Russell. So revamping a little bit. 16, I had KJ Jackson. 15, I had Austin Simmons. 14, I had Jared Curtis. 13, I had Aaron Philo. 12, I had Kenny Minchie. 11, I had Faison Brandon. And 10, I had Keenan Russell. So 9, that gets us into Mr. Byron Brown from Auburn. Now, I'm solely have Byron Brown here because he's been in this offense with Golish. He had great years at USF. He's had production. He has a little bit more tenure on these guys below. But I do think that he will be solid this year. Quirky throwing motion. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very dependent upon this offensive line. This is an offensive line that's being revamped from the top down. Extremely tedious with the revamping of this offensive line. But I do trust in Golish. I think the receivers that came over, I think the offense is going to, I think Auburn's going to be better this year, merely because of the fact that Hugh Freeze didn't even have a pulse when it came to what he came to do at Auburn, which was, you know, win SEC championships, vie for national championships. And the one thing would be is have an elite offense because he's quote unquote an elite offensive mind. At least he was. But that didn't connect at Auburn. But I like Byron Brown here. Do I think he's going to have a lot of that with his arm? No, I think he's going to be a lot of this is going to be with his ability to run the football, be dual threat in this Alex Golish offense. And so, that's why I have him where I have him, which is number 8 on the list. 7, I have Sam Levitt out of LSU. Now, this is a tough one for me because I do think these 3 quarterbacks are a little bit in a grouping as well. The 3 quarterbacks, without mentioning their order, I had a hard time picking between Sam Levitt, Marcel Reed, and Lenore Sellers because I do think there could be an opportunity where all of these 3 quarterbacks could be good. One of them could be great. The other 2 could have rough years, or all 3 of them could have rough years, right? Because the things you worry about sometimes with Sam Levitt is like, did he come in? Does he have enough reps? Was he Lane Kiffin's like number one, you know, his number one get, or was he just the best that was there? I mean, if you remember correctly, Lane Kiffin practically went and stole him from Tennessee. So you have to wonder. He hasn't seen the field a lot during the fall. Is he coming in 100%? Nobody knows, but I will tell you that in Lane Kiffin, I trust. Do I like Lane Kiffin a lot? Not really, but do I think he's a great offensive mind? Do I think he can get quarterbacks to play up to their, very high potential? Absolutely, I do. So I think that this is a safe pick here for Levitt and dangerous for anybody else in the SEC if Levitt actually ends up a little bit higher statistically when you look at his ceiling and his floor. His floor is, I think his ceiling's a lot higher under Lane Kiffin than his floor. I think if I could say his floor, I could say maybe Byron Brown, he's kind of there, right? Because I just don't know what to really think about him. I haven't seen him a lot in the spring, and what does his injury look like? So I think he's safe there, right? At that number, like I really do. Next one I have in there at 6 is Lenore Sellers. Sellers is interesting. He's very interesting because I don't know, like this is a tough. Yeah, you look at Shane Beamer, and I think all you could say is that Shane Beamer has figured out how to not win and not finish the drill at South Carolina in some ways, where you can look at Lenore Sellers, you can look at Nick Barber, you can look at all of the studs they have on defense, Dylan Stewart, and you can look and go, what is the disconnect? I have Lenore Sellers here this year because I really am kind of rooting a little bit for this South Carolina team to just be better, just to play to their potential. And yes, I know we played. I know that South Carolina plays Georgia this year. I'm not in the corner over here as a dog fan rooting for South Carolina, but I am saying, Shane Beamer. I don't think for lack of, is he quirky? Is he weird in some areas? Yeah, he's a little bit weird. I think he's a good coach. I think he's a good recruiter, right? I think he made some decisions to make some coaching changes on the offensive side of the ball that are going to be better this year. But once again, the rise and fall will be on this offensive line. I think the positional stuff, running back, tight end, wide receiver. I think this is all going to be productive. I think you look at the defensive line, linebacker. You look at the defense. I think it can do its job. Is this a 4-win or a 6-win or an 8-win South Carolina? I can tell you this. Yeah, I think it's got to be 8, or obviously, I think 9 is the ceiling. It could be 4. I think 4 is the floor, but I think it'll end up around 6. But this is where I have Lenore Sellers. I think he could be one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the league. How's that going to work with an offensive line that's been mediocre? And they've made some jumps and strides with Jarius Peak and these things. But some of these guys, we've talked about it before, had bonehead, off seasons where they did stupid things, and now they're coming in here with not 100% possibly for fall ball. So I think Lenore Sellers is safe there. At 5 right here, I have Marcel Reed here. Marcel Reed is interesting, man. He's had some big games against some big teams. He struggled against other teams. I think this is the year where you get to look at Marcel Reed and go, hey, can he put it all together? He still has great receivers. I think he has an offensive line that, compared to some offensive lines, are it's good. I think there's a lot that can rise and fall on the offensive line, like a lot of SEC teams. But with Marcel Reed, you just got to be like, which one's going to show up? That's the reason why I would think that he could even be higher, depending on the output. And will they have the running game this year that they should have had in the past and have had in the past? That has been the only saving grace, in my opinion, sometimes, for him not having the games he should have. But I like Marcel Reed here. I think he's safe right there at 5. Next, I have John Mateer at Oklahoma. With everything I said earlier about Oklahoma, I won't go too far in depth with John Mateer, but a lot will be dependent upon, can they get the running game going? Can John Mateer get comfortable back there enough now that he's 100% healthy? Just throw emotions on, and can he be comfortable enough back there to be a game changer when he has to throw the ball, and not just be a game changer when it comes down to carrying the football? I think with the studs around him, Satania and a couple of these guys, I think he has to be very productive throwing the football this year. And I think if he falls here, I think that Texas A&M could get in the playoffs. I think if he falls higher, look out, because Texas A&M could make a run if they wanted to. All right. When we get into these last 3, this is going to be controversial. I got about 4 or 5 minutes left tonight. So I'm just going to fly through these. Some of these lists have, I'll just tell you, there's a 70% to 80% ratio of a lot of these lists out there, close towards 80. I think it's around 78% that align with the top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC being Gunnar Stockton, Trinidad Chambliss, and Arch Manning. That's from 3 to 1. Okay. Um, I will tell you at three, I have Arch Manning. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. Remember what I said earlier when we talk about predicting what the year will look like and things of that nature. This is going to give away who my two is and who my one is, but my top three, I'll go and give it away and let's have the debate why. So I have Arch Manning at three, I have Gunnar Stockton at two, and I have Trinidad Chambliss at one. Now, the reason why I have Trinidad Chambliss at one, and we're talking about looking towards the beginning of the year, there's some unknowns there in this offense that's not being called by, Lane Kiffin. That's not Lane Kiffin's baby anymore. Is it going to be enough? And this was with games in the playoffs that some of these other people didn't have, but to produce another 3,900, almost 4,000 yard year. I don't know. But I will tell you, with the dynamic of Trinidad Chambliss, his legs, and his ability to make the plays he made last year, I think it's only fair that he is one on this list. But I do have Gunnar Stockton at second and not Arch Manning at second over Arch Manning at three. Now, when you look at statistics, here's some statistics that I think people slight Gunnar for. Okay. When I'm putting statistics up against him and Arch, not necessarily Trinidad, him and Arch, but we'll bring Trinidad into the race here. Arch Manning had 248 completions last year at around 61%, and he had 7 interceptions and 26 TDs. Gunnar Stockton had more completions, 269 completions, had almost a 70% completion rate at 69%. He only threw 5 interceptions last year, and he had a total of 24 touchdowns last year to Arch's 26, and 10 of those was on the ground. So when I look at this year, and this is a year of Gunnar Stockton not being counting a year where he's, the backup coming in to play the role after Carson Beck is out you know, in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl, and the second year, even full year. This is the actual second full year of Arch Manning. I'm sorry, of Gunnar Stockton being the quarterback at Georgia, and I think you're going to see improvements. I'm not going to go any farther in that, but I just want to back up why I think those statistics are valid. Is Arch Manning the bigger NFL prospect? Yeah, maybe. I mean, for all we know, realistically, the NFL would tell you that Arch Manning is more of the NFL prospect even than Trinidad Chambliss. But in my opinion, in my opinion, Gunnar Stockton has, I have him higher on this list than Arch Manning, because when I look, I think he's a little more consistent than Arch Manning from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Did he have his weird games here or there? Yeah. But I'm also bringing in the fact if I got these three players with the game on the line from what was proven last year, I'm going Arch, then Gunnar, then Trinidad. That's just me. So that is my 16 top 16, well, all 16 SEC quarterback rankings for 2026 coming in. You may agree with some, you may disagree with some, but that's where I got it at. So, man, we are looking forward to next week, SEC Media Days. Don't forget on Tuesday, Georgia will be going. We represented by Raylan Wilson, Drew Bobo, and Gunnar Stockton will be flying down to Tampa. If you haven't already done so, man, push for my credentials. If you know somebody in Tampa, at the JW Marriott that can get me some credentials to get Dogs Down South in there, please don't hesitate. I would love to go and be a part and to ask some questions and to bring it back here. And look, I told you earlier, my mom used to tell me it's no until you ask, and it's no, and you got to keep dreaming, because if you don't dream, then it's always a no, right? So, but other than that, it's going to be a really cool week next week to hear questions and to hear all these coaches, the new coaches taking the mic, the old coaches, like I said, at new schools taking the mic, and then the ones who, the Eli Drinkowitzes, the Kirby Smarts, some of these guys, the Shane Beamers that have been at these schools for a long, long time, doing just another SEC Media Day at their same team. It's going to be a great week. It's going to be exciting. If you haven't already done so, please go and like and follow us. Thank you for all of the follows on YouTube. Make sure you share out the lives, tell your friends. Let us know. Apple Podcast, Dogs Down South 24 hours later, Spotify, our Facebook page. And then don't forget about TikTok. We're going to be uploading so much content on TikTok soon, soon, soon. But that'll do it for tonight. That's a wrap for SEC summer preview for Wednesday night. Getting ready to shut it down with our next episode where we will do our last two teams. And then we will also be doing our SEC final standings, preseason preview of how we think it'll all finish to wrap up the summer preview. And then we will jump straight into Georgia. We will be back on the grind and bringing you nothing but Georgia content um, as we're revving up for camp, injury reports, everything that's going on during camp, and then as we lead up to opening day between the hedges. So thanks for joining tonight, as always. Look forward to seeing you soon. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And as always, on Dogs Down South, go Dogs.